All right, so the buildup lasted weeks, but the actual event lasted just minutes. Marjorie Taylor Greene, moments ago, officially called for Speaker Mike Johnson's job, but Republicans and Democrats came to the Speaker's defense. The latest from Capitol Hill, here on the Hill in moments, plus a live look at the White House as there is potentially movement regarding the southern border. There are new reports out that President Biden is about to take action, and a live look right now at Mar-a-Lago, where Donald Trump is reportedly dealing with something much, much different: NFTs. So what's that all about? Come on in, I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. We got a little bit of movement on this Wednesday evening. Hanging out with us here on The Hill, Chris Steyerwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute as well. Kelly Meyer, NewsNation Washington correspondent. Chris Hahn is the former senior aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, NewsNation contributor as well. And Aaron Perini, a Republican strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in as we take a live look at the House floor. You know, we had been waiting for this for weeks. Marjorie Taylor Greene had been threatening Mike Johnson's job. He was on this set last week, said bless her heart, and there were questions about whether or not she would go forward with this. Chris, she did. She put the motion to vacate on the floor, and just like that, it's done.
Just like that, it's done. But remember, there were 196 Republicans who, I stole Kelly's pen so I could write it down. There are 196 Republicans who voted to protect Johnson. Mm-hmm. Some of those folks still have primaries. Mm-hmm. Some of those folks, and the point of this vote was not to remove Johnson. It was to be as odious and difficult as possible. And, you know, have you ever looked at Donald Trump when they say, oh, they don't want me to say it? They don't want me to say it. What does he love to do? He loves to do what the people tell him not to do. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is in many ways the purest disciple, the most pure apostle of Donald Trump, which is whenever they tell you not to do, you go do it, you kick them in the shins, and you get all the attention, and the story's all about you.
We are hearing that we might hear from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, here at some point. So if I jump in on you, that's probably the reason why. But up to Capitol Hill. Before then, Joe Khalil, Joe K, roaming the Capitol hallways for us. You got a little action there, Joe, in the last hour or so. Were you expecting this? How did this all come together?
We thought this was a possibility. We saw her and Thomas Massie come up to the microphone, so, you know, is what it is. But not with a bang, ended with a whimper, Blake. This is actually what we expected to happen, because we had been reporting for weeks now that Republicans, by and large, were not going to support this. Even the Republicans who are hardliners, who express the same frustrations with Speaker Mike Johnson than Marjorie Taylor Greene does, even they had been telling us this was a bad idea. It's not good politics in an election year, a couple months away out from November. And even former President Trump was very clear he did not want Marjorie Taylor Greene to do this. So we sort of knew this was going to happen, and 196 Republicans voted to support Speaker Johnson and table the vote. 163 Democrats joined them. So ironically, this was one of the most bipartisan votes in this Congress so far, and it was to save Speaker Johnson from his job. However, we should caveat, at any point, Marjorie Taylor Greene can trigger this vote again. There's nothing stopping her or any other member. So we might see it again between now and November. Who knows? For now, okay. Speaker Johnson is safe.
Joe K. up in the Capitol hallways. Joe, thank you. So I mentioned the moment from Marjorie Taylor Greene just a little while ago. Here it was.
The form of the resolution is as follows. Declaring the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives to be vacant. This is the uniparty for the American people watching.
All right, Aaron, so that was Marjorie Taylor Greene. Chris made the comp there to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has just weighed in. He has posted the following, saying, quote, I absolutely love Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's got spirit, she's got fight, and I believe she'll be around and on our side for a long time to come. However, Republicans have to be fighting the radical left Democrats and all the damage they have done to our country. He goes on and on from there. This is your party. Donald Trump was saying essentially no chaos for now. Was it chaos?
No. vote went up, vote went down, we're moving on. This should be hopefully done. Hopefully we don't see these antics again. But I will point out what Marjorie Taylor Greene failed to do was get any consensus from Republicans about ousting Speaker Johnson. It shows he really does have strength in this leadership position. This was a majority of Republicans, which used to be the threshold for ousting a speaker. So should Republicans win again in November and be able to change the rules again back to a majority or move that threshold up, you're only going to make the speaker stronger.
Your party saved him. You're a big Mike Johnson fan, huh?
Well, my former boss, Tom Suozzi, was one of the first people to say he would not support this motion when she made it to begin, when she filed it to begin with a couple of weeks ago. So I guess Marge is not in charge. Johnson's going to get to rule the day for a couple more. And I think that's a good thing. Look, the season's almost, the session's almost over. There's going to be an election in a couple of months. And then there'll be a fight for Speaker of the House. And I'm 100% confident that Hakeem Jeffries will win it the next time. But until then, Johnson has the votes. The Republicans won the majority. You know what? He's bringing things to the floor that need to get voted on, like budgets, like aid to Ukraine. The Democrats had no reason to get in line and oust him.
You were right. Big fan of Speaker Johnson.
He didn't deny it when I said big fan of Speaker Johnson. What do you make of Donald Trump stepping in here?
I think it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting he's still standing by Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's someone that has been very loyal to him, so he's still, tweeting that or taking to truth to talk about it. But interesting that he's calling for, peace and less chaos. And it's interesting.
I mean, you're not going to change jockeys now in this race, I think is the bottom line for Republicans, right?
So the problem with revolutions is that they eventually eat themselves, right? And so Republicans started a revolution about not you, no, not you, no, not you, and they cycled through McCarthy, and we had the Jim Jordan thing and all that stuff. So on it goes.
You have some reporting on the border. We're going to get to that in a second, but come on in, Sean Spicer, NewsNation contributor, of course, former press secretary in Donald Trump's administration. Sean, Donald Trump is sitting back watching all this, weighing in, and he's doing so. Hello, Sean, by the way, as I see you pop on the screen. I haven't talked to you in a while. Nice to see you, Sean. I think of Donald Trump right now in Mar-a-Lago, and I want to move on from Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second, because it caught my attention what Donald Trump is doing there, and I wonder why. He's at Mar-a-Lago right now, Sean, addressing the folks who bought his NFTs. It's a day in which Trump isn't in court. Why is he doing this?
Well, it's also, I think it's seafood buffet night tonight at Mar-a-Lago. So that's always the claws are unbelievable. I've had the privilege of being
I'm sure they are.
So I mean, that might be. So anyway, look, I don't think it's surprising he rolled these things out. He's having a dinner. I'm a little intrigued by the parlor game. The guy doesn't need media attention.
Sean, I'm sorry. I got to jump in. Here's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. I apologize.
I want to say that I appreciate the show of confidence from my colleagues to defeat this misguided effort. That is certainly what it was. As I've said from the beginning, and I've made clear here every day, I intend to do my job. I intend to do what I believe to be the right thing, which is what I was elected to do, and I'll let the chips fall where they may. In my view, that is leadership. Members have just voted. They made their voices heard on the motion to vacate matter, and now we have very important work to do for the country. There are a lot of things to fix. Last week, we announced a house-wide effort to crack down on anti-Semitism on campus. This morning, we introduced legislation to fortify American elections and ensure that only American citizens can vote. I'm glad that this distraction is not going to inhibit that important work and all of the other things that are on the table and on the agenda for us right now. Hopefully, this is the end of the personality politics and the frivolous character assassination that has defined the 118th Congress. It's regrettable. It's not who we are as Americans, and we're better than this. We need to get beyond it. The Speaker of the House serves the whole House. That's the job, everybody. But I am a lifelong movement conservative Republican, and I intend to continue to govern in accordance with those core principles. We believe in the core principles. I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but they're also the core principles of America itself. I believe in individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the guiding principles that inform our work.
All right, so that of course, the House Speaker Mike Johnson addressing the media there after the motion to vacate came. and left seemingly in a matter of seconds. Sean Spicer, I'm sorry for jumping in there, but I'm sure you could see why we did. I want to get back to the NFT thing for a second, but first your reaction to Mike Johnson and why Donald Trump is sticking by his side as you see it.
Yeah, I thought you were excited to see me, and then you just trumped the Speaker of the House. But anyway, I'll get over that. Look, I think Donald Trump, rightly so, he's made it clear he does not need to see these sideshows. Marjorie Taylor Greene, as the panel discussed, has been very loyal to him, but that doesn't negate the fact that he needs people focused on this election. He needs less chaos, less sideshows, and let the Speaker do his job. The Speaker's done everything that he's been asked to do. He hasn't veered on any of these random one-off. So I think the president wants to see the House Republicans stay focused, stay on message, so that he can run and prosecute the case against Joe Biden in the next few months. Plain and simple, that's it.
Okay, so every single day in court, Sean, when I see Donald Trump walk in and I see Donald Trump walk out, he addresses the media, and he has said over the last, month or so, give or take, a version of, because I'm here, I cannot campaign. Here, for example, is just a little bit of the president, and then I'll get your reaction on the other side.
I'm not in Georgia or Florida or North Carolina campaigning like I should be. I'd like to be able to campaign. I should be out campaigning right now.
I should be campaigning right now, Sean. Today is a day when he's not in court and he's not campaigning. Back to the initial conversation. He's at Mar-a-Lago meeting with folks who bought his NFTs. Isn't that a waste of his time?
I'm sure he had other things happening today. There's meetings that happened during the campaign. I've been involved in 2 presidential campaigns. Not everything is out on the trail. There's strategy meetings. There's calls with donors. I don't know what the rest of the day looked like for him, but to have one-off meeting for a bunch of people who've been supporting his business interests doesn't bother me. Look, this is not an election where anyone's wondering who's Donald Trump, who's Joe Biden. This is going to be a get-out-the-vote effort. The more that we can put into fundraising to make sure that we have a robust get-out-the-vote effort in the 7 battleground states, the better. If he had been doing this week after week, I'd be concerned. But he was in Wisconsin and Michigan last week. He'll be in Minnesota next week. He's got a very robust campaign schedule. I'm not worried about either one of these candidates not being known by the voters in the key battleground states.
So, Aaron, the next time Donald Trump walks out to a camera and says, I should be in state whatever, should we not listen to him?
No, I think you can do both.
I guess the question is, how do you defend this? How do you defend him going down to Mar-a-Lago? And
I think Sean did that brilliantly. I think Sean laid out the case that you don't know what the rest of the day looked like for Donald Trump. You don't know if he had donor calls or what else he was doing. And the fact is that this was a one-off. This doesn't seem to be a repeated pattern of behavior. I think Sean's right that if we are looking another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month from now, and he's still doing NFT meetings instead of going to Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, then you should be concerned. But a one-off day, maybe he needed a little bit of a down day. It's been a grueling schedule for the man.
Time is the one resource you cannot buy more of, right? And he wastes a lot of it. He's sitting around with guys who bought NFTs for him. I bet you there was some golf going on at Mar-a-Lago today, too. I don't know for sure, but I'm just guessing. He wastes a lot of time. He's wasting a lot of money. That's probably why his numbers are falling in states like Wisconsin. I'm sure
you're flipping the pages because
you can ignore almost everything that politicians say. You know that, right? That when Donald Trump said, "Well, if I wasn't here, I'd be out in North." Well, he wasn't out in North Carolina when he wasn't on trial.
Right.
And this is just your permission, America. When partisans say stuff, you can discount most of it because what else is he going to say, right? So,
I agree.
All right, Sean Spicer, it is good to see you. Sorry we had to interrupt you, but we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, I will say that, look, 4 days a week is a little different than a one-off. So there's plenty of time in the week. He's been way too much time in court is the bottom line.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. Sean, great to see you as always.
I wanted to invite you to this fundraiser, Blake. I was ready to invite you to this fundraiser. I know we're...
Hold up closer to the camera
Trump in
so I can
Minnesota
see the
next
details.
week.
Hold it closer to the camera so I can see the details, Sean.
When he's supposed to be at graduation? Is that the one he's going to?
What does it say? What does it say?
Private planes make those things easy, don't they?
Yeah, let's see.
It is, but here's the thing. Since you're pushing me out, it's the graduation's at 10 a.m., the fundraiser's at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
I think you can do both with a private plane.
I hope he shows up to graduation.
Thank you, sir. Coming up here on the Hill on NewsNation. How about this from the New York Times? RFK Jr. says doctors found a dead worm in his brain. How RFK Jr.'s campaign is forcefully pushing back today. And on the other side of the break, you are going to break down what?
I'm going to break down thinking about how there's a worm in somebody's brain.
So it was a big headline in the New York Times today. I found it. It was a big headline in the New York Times. I think it says a lot about how folks perceive the threat of RFK Jr. We're going to get to that in a second, but what are you breaking down?
I'm going to get super nerdy on numbers. It's time, people. I've fought it as long as I could, but we're going to get swing statey, we're going to get collar countery, we're going to get down into the nitty. We will descend into the particular, and you're going to enjoy it, I promise.
Steyerwalt breaks it down, what happened in Indiana, and a link to Wisconsin. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
What long hair.
Yeah, it's like...
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. So remember Nikki Haley? Clearly they do in Indiana, as she received more than 128,000 votes in the Indiana primary last night. But let's take I-65 north to I-94. Head on up to Wisconsin for a moment, as there could be a connection between the two. Steyerwalt is here to break it all down.
Talking about the Eisenhower interstate system, you do know how to excite a pundit. I love that stuff. That's great. Okay. Wisconsin is Donald Trump's shortest path to 270. So if we work under the assumption, and I do, that if the election were held today, Trump would pretty clearly win Georgia and probably Arizona. Arizona's a little tougher, but let's give him the southern tier and North Carolina. Okay, so he's got that. Then he needs one northern tier state. So we know the big three up north, that's Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Of those three, Wisconsin is the best way in for Trump. It's the easiest way in. Why is Joe Biden there today? Because he's trying to block him. So here are the numbers from the Marquette University Law School poll. And this is what they look like now, and this is what they look like then. So in 2024, Biden is down just a little bit. And in 2020, at this same point, Biden was up a little bit. So the race is inverted. It's flipped from where it was 4 years ago. And that's bad for Joe Biden, because look at this. He tracked from this point in 2020 to a win of about half the size, right? He ended up coming in with this win of about half the margin of where he was today, and only 20,862 votes. So Biden is on track to lose Wisconsin and therefore to lose the election. So where is he today? He is in Racine. You see that down there, south of Milwaukee, right there. So Racine, you see Ozaukee County, Washington County, Waukesha County, and Racine County. So those are the key suburbs. This is where the vote is in Wisconsin, generally speaking. And Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha counties are more affluent, and they're more traditional Republican, Ozaukee County particularly. Racine is a little bit more blue collar, a little bit more working class. But it's a lot of the same suburban voters. Biden is there to talk to these voters. Racine County is a place that Republicans had won traditionally. Then they flipped it. The Democrats flipped it in the Obama years. Obama actually won Racine County twice, which he was the first Democrat in some time to do that. And then Trump brought it back, and he won it twice, but not by much. This is a place where Biden thinks that he can do it. Why does he think he can do it there? Well, look and see here. Look and see at the final fantastic graphic from Kevin. Here we go. Yeah. Why is Nikki Haley still carding almost a quarter of the vote in Indiana in a race that's been over since March? Why come? What is the reason for this? Here's what should be telling. Indiana had a hot and heavy primary this year, and there was a lot of contest on both sides, and it was a big turnout primary year. So some of these folks are protest voters, and other folks are just Republicans who came out and punched the ticket for Nikki Haley while they were there. Those are the voters. Why, you ask yourself, why is Joe Biden in Wisconsin today? Why is he where he is in Wisconsin today? He's sucking up to those voters. He wants to talk to those voters and say, give us a chance over here.
Steyerwalt breaks it down. So as we look at those numbers, I think some folks might look at that and say, okay, if she's grabbing 20%, let's say, why doesn't he just make her the VP?
Oh, right.
I know there's mistrust and distrust there, but I mean, if it's a base turnout and she's still Oh, you thought that was a crazy question?
No, it's not crazy.
No, Aaron thinks it's crazy.
I just don't see a path for Nikki Haley to get on that ticket with him.
Hates her.
Yeah, there's too much animosity there. And I understand that Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis may have seemingly buried the hatchet, but that doesn't mean he's at the same place with Nikki Haley at this
Right.
point.
No, and Trump also has to worry about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
How does he get those votes? If it's not her on the ticket, how does he get those votes?
He stops, he's found innocent of the whole porn star issue he's in here in New York, because a lot of people care about that, or in that 20%. I'm telling you they do. I'm telling you that there are values voters in the Republican parties who are not hypocrites or sheep. They are going to do what they think is right, and I don't think they believe in this man anymore.
It's the economy. If he's got to be talking about the things that the American people are saying that they care about, it's the economy and the border, the things that Joe Biden is weakest on. Joe Biden was in Wisconsin today talking about jobs and a $3 billion investment by a private company to bring jobs there, and he was hitting Trump on Foxconn. But what he forgot to remember is that Foxconn still employs 1,200 people in the state of Wisconsin, so there are still voters he's alienating as he's trying to deliver an economic message.
Nostril of all of those voters in the WOW counties to the north and west and in Racine County is going to be that Donald Trump is unfit. They're going to see, so the Biden campaign is starting to take advantage of its cash advantage.
Yep.
And they're starting to spend, and the swing state dump is on. And the message for these voters, both of you are right in your own way, but the core message with these voters is, you are disgusted by Donald Trump.
Yep.
Donald Trump is unfit for command, and you can't vote for him. Doesn't matter if you vote for Joe Biden. You just can't vote for this guy.
That 20% remembers the year 2020.
Yeah.
They remember the chaos of 2020. A lot of people have forgotten it. But those 20% that keep showing up, I believe they remember it clearly. And I think that your question about Nikki Haley is absolutely right.
I just think the average person who doesn't follow politics might look at the numbers and be like, okay, so pick her.
It's a fair question. It's just not a reality.
Right.
Yeah.
The irony is you're right, and it would be the correct thing for Donald Trump to do to handily win the election. But he won't do it. And
I don't think anybody votes for vice president, but it could help him unite his party somewhat. And I don't think this is all about Nikki Haley. I think it's more of a protest vote against Trump.
All right, coming up still here on the Hill, you have some excellent reporting on the southern border, the president and the White House, Department of Homeland Security. We're going to get to Kelly on that in a moment, but also on the other side of the break, RFK Jr. and his health brought on the forefront today by the New York Times. What they reported, what the campaign is saying now. We're back in a few.
What a lower.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. We are expecting potentially here, maybe even in the upcoming days, some pretty big news out of the White House as we are hearing the Biden administration is ready to take action at the southern border. A new regulation is expected soon that would allow for the removal of migrants who are ineligible for asylum much earlier in the process. Kelly Meyer, you have the news on this.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're hearing, and I would note as well that this came a day after, at least the reports of all this, came a day after 15 House Democrats wrote to President Biden and said, we need something now.
Yeah, and we got our hands on that letter that they submitted, 15 House Democrats. They're all from key battleground states, states where they have tough elections coming up. They're calling on Biden to take executive action at the border, saying that he needs to do something.
What are you hearing now?
Then we're seeing from sources familiar with this proposal. So basically that they're going to, as you said, people already ineligible for asylum would be deemed ineligible earlier in the process, so that would lead to their removal sooner. The Biden administration, folks I've been talking with are saying that it's not the big, executive action that people have been watching for, and whether or not that will come, people have been saying that's going to come. Mm-hmm. But they're saying that this may not be as big of a deal as people think it is, but it's still going to remove people sooner. They said if we were changing who is ineligible, that would be bigger news, but we're just changing moving them out of the country.
So this is the line I have underlined from the note that you sent out. If this rule came at any other time, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal, these sources added. I see you smirking because it's not a big deal, or they don't want it to be a big deal.
Well, they don't want it to be a big deal, but also let's see if this actually happens. This is the third time the Biden administration will now be floating a trial balloon on any action relative to the border through executive action.
Let me stop
I don't
you there.
believe it. And reporters need to be pushing back on this White House and saying, stop giving me these anonymous sources and start telling me if this stuff is actually going to happen. Because if a Republican did this, and I've mentioned this on this show before, if a Republican administration stood there and continued to do this to reporters, they would rightfully get in trouble. And they did.
So, hold on.
No, I'm telling you, the reporters need to start pushing back and telling this White House, you better start putting up or shutting up on this stuff.
Before you jump in, do you expect this to happen in the coming days? I mean, you've been talking to these folks. Like, I wonder what your gut, what your feel tells you.
So what the source mentioned was that this is a proposed rule, not something that is going into effect tomorrow. So people are floating that it's going to happen tomorrow, but that it's just proposed. There's just delicate balance with this.
Yesterday we talked about the letter. Off air, Mick said, "Do you think it was coordinated?" I go, "Yeah." I think this whole thing is coordinated and orchestrated and building up, and it will happen soon at a moment where it'll have maximum political impact. Get ready. It's exactly how I would have done it.
So when? When soon?
I would say sometime when it's needed for absolute political impact.
Like when a bad moment happens?
When you need to distract from something else.
Right, because why actually do the work to secure the border when you could just
we could have just passed a bill. Like there was a bill that was negotiated by the most conservative member of the United States Senate.
Let's not
it was done.
Let's not relitigate that.
We really want to fix the border. Like, again, I hear from the right, well, he could just do it whenever he wants. If we really wanted to fix the border, they wouldn't have been playing political games with Donald Trump. They would have voted on a bill that would have helped.
I
wonder, Chris, what your gut tells you hearing from Kelly and sort of what Chris has outlined here.
So the Biden administration, the White House and the campaign have adopted a strategy, a Goldilocks strategy, where they're always looking to have a little of this and a little of that, right? And on Israel, we're going to have this, but we're going to stop this weapon shipment. On the protesters, we're going to say this, but we're going to do that. And on this, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. I would just say that as a matter of political practice, sooner or later, they're going to have to do something. I think they'd be smart if they did what Chris describes, but I think it's unlikely because what would be smart for them to do is say, okay, hippies, you're going to be mad. Get ready. You're really going to hate this. And it's actually the anger of your base that helps you move with persuadable voters. And I would get that out of the way sooner. I would say, we're clamping down on the border. Let the Castro brothers' heads explode. Let everybody yell at you. Let them say that you're the deporter in chief. That worked for Barack Obama.
It did.
And Biden would be wise to court that heat rather than continue to try to straddle.
Okay. All right. Meantime, RFK Jr. says doctors found a dead worm in his brain. That, believe it or not, was a splashy headline from the New York Times earlier today, revealing a health episode from 2010 that left RFK Jr. with memory loss, according to a deposition that he gave later, according to the Times. Now the campaign is pushing back, telling the Washington Post that RFK Jr. contracted a parasite while traveling. A spokesperson telling the Washington Post, quote, the issue was resolved more than 10 years ago, and he is in robust physical and mental health. Questioning Mr. Kennedy's health is a hilarious suggestion given his competition. So this story dropped, and then here's what happened. Donald Trump's campaign manager, Chris Lacidova, posted the following. He said, no bleep, Dick Tracy, meaning like, yeah, you know, the Trump campaign was sort of jumping on all this. Democrats today have posted a billboard in the state of Nevada, which I hear is an important state.
I've heard it's important.
In which they describe RFK as a spoiler. This came in a story from the New York Times. So that's sort of all the ingredients that are thrown into the pot when this happened, how Democrats are responding, how Republicans are responding. And I think it just goes to show how they all view him as a big-time problem.
Yeah. He is both literally and figuratively a free radical, right? Nobody knows how it lands. Nobody knows who it's going to hurt more, and it'll be different in this state and different in that state and all of this stuff. Trump is angry at him, but at the same time, you see from left-leaning outlets these attacks on him that are, you know, his campaign is shot through with MAGA, deep state, blah, 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 blah. So he freaks everybody out. And the good thing for him is people can't stop talking about him.
Well, when elections are decided by 40,000 votes in 4 states, everything matters. So whoever he's taking votes for is going to matter. But the number I like to point to is a number Chris brought up a couple of weeks ago when I was on the show. Whose base fears the other guy more? And Democrats fear Trump more, which makes me think that RFK Jr. is more of a problem for Trump, because at the end of the day, the fear of a Trump presidency is going to bring Democrats home. It might not do the same for Trump.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. And I also think that as RFK Jr. tries to court these voters and goes out, he's going to find a more receptive audience. This is something Trump has to, the vaccine question and other things, Trump has to watch out here, because as he reaches to the middle, there are MAGA voters who, you asked before, why wouldn't he pick Nikki Haley? Mm-hmm. How many votes would Donald Trump lose to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. if he picked Nikki Haley? And the number ain't zero.
So in this article from the New York Times, this was an episode from 2010. They also go through other health episodes decades before. They interview doctors, not his doctor, but doctors generally about these conditions. I think it's a very legitimate question, right? This is a guy who is polling in double digits and could very well tip the election one way or another. It's a legitimate question to say, what are his health episodes? But the way that they went about it,
comical.
with the headline of something from 15 years ago, quoting doctors who have never seen him before, Aaron, to me, I thought that was a hello moment.
Well, of course, they're looking for clicks and they're looking for the big headline, and putting a big headline out there that they found a worm in the guy's brain is certainly going to get people paying attention. I think the larger conversation when it comes to health is fair of all three candidates. We are talking about the most powerful individual in the most powerful country in the world, and we should get full transparency from every candidate about what their mental capacity, their health, and their stamina is at this point, and that includes RFK, because to your point, he's polling in double digits. He's going to be a spoiler. It's just who's he spoiling?
I think there's a concern, I think, from both the campaigns that I've been hearing, that he definitely can pull, as we said, both votes from both of the candidates. It's interesting that the DNC was calling him a spoiler. I know he just had that presentation last week, RFK Jr. saying that Biden is the spoiler, and then having him sign a letter that he would drop out if whoever was polling more ahead in October or something like that.
The Libertarian Party that Kennedy was once going to court for their nomination, who's going to their convention? Mm-hmm. Donald Trump.
Why are they allowing that? He's in theory, the Libertarian Party wants a libertarian to be president of the United States. Why are they allowing the Republican nominee for president to show up at the Libertarian Party convention?
I don't like to pick on the minor parties, but I will say, now Kelly's throwing a pen. Kelly. I don't like to pick on the minor parties, but I would say in this case, in the light most favorable to the defendant, we'll say they seek visibility. Yes. That they seek visibility.
All right. They nominated Howard Stern in New York, and I was there.
Keep bringing back Howard Stern. Yes. Other side of the break, we go live to Capitol Hill. There was the big moment, I guess, a moment earlier today with Marjorie Taylor Greene asking for Mike Johnson's job, essentially, and that went kaput. One of the members of Congress joining us, Anthony D'Esposito, live on the other side of the break. You're watching The Hill.
Tomorrow on NewsNation. Crisis on the border.
From the air and on the ground, ride with Border Patrol live and see what our law enforcement are truly battling.
A must-see primetime event tomorrow at 9/8 Central, only on NewsNation.
Woman Marjorie Taylor Greene went through with her threat for a motion to vacate, essentially saying the speaker should go. We knew that going into this that Democrats were going to come to the Republican side. That is exactly what happened. What we learned, though, is that 11 Republicans, not 2, not a handful, but 11, voted to oust, or at least go forward with possibly ousting the House Speaker. Come on in, the Congressman from New York, Republican, Anthony D'Esposito joins us live from Capitol Hill. Congressman, you surprised? Obviously, look, this is a moment for Mike Johnson. This happened. It's on, and move on forward, I guess you could say. But 11 members in the party saying that he should lose his job. You surprised that number hit that high?
I'm not surprised. I think that people are focused more on their personal intentions instead of what's best for the conference. And I think what was clear today are Democrats were concerned about heading down the same path that they took when they sided with the minority of our party to send our country into chaos last time by ousting Speaker McCarthy.
Do you owe Democrats?
We don't know Democrats. I think the Democrats realized that last time they made a mistake, again, taking the majority with the minority of the Republicans in ousting Speaker McCarthy and sending our conference and the House into chaos for the next few weeks.
What about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, the two who essentially triggered this, the two who essentially went forward with this? Should there be consequences? I don't know what that may or may not be, but do you think there should be consequences for them? Or is this their right as one of 535?
I think that's a decision that Speaker Johnson and leadership is going to have to take. And I think that when we get back next week, we're going to have to come together as a conference and once again answer those very difficult questions. You know, next week what we should be doing is focused on passing legislation that benefits law enforcement, as it being Police Week here in Washington, D.C., where hundreds of thousands of members of law enforcement will come across Capitol Hill. But instead, we will once again be dealing with those who are focused more on their personal agenda rather than the conference. And I think the Rolling Stones said it best. You can't always get what you want. Governing is about compromise. It's about having conversations. It's about having negotiations. And that's what we should be doing instead of playing these games on the floor of the House.
If you had to say anything to her, what would you tell her?
I would say to focus on what's best for the interest of this country, what's best for this conference. And what that is electing and growing our majority in November in the House by taking on the Senate and by electing Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, we thank you for rushing to the camera. Been a busy afternoon for you, I'm sure. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
What about that idea of... Yeah, for sure. What about that idea of... Can they do anything to her?
They could do whatever they want to her.
They could kick her out. There's a lot of potential things. No, let's get back to work. Let's get back to focus. She did her antics on the floor. We don't need retaliation here as a party. Let's get back to work. Let's get the job done.
All right. The line from Trump in his tweet about now's not the time. Maybe later. So he's keeping Johnson. He's keeping Johnson on a leash. Saying, you better behave, or maybe next time I'll feel differently.
Okay. Speaking of Trump, meantime, talk show hosts, they have always found material in presidents. Right now is no different. Jon Stewart, though, have you heard what Jon Stewart said? Caught a little bit of flack last time as he mocked President Biden's age. Caught flack from the left. He is not letting up, though. The host of The Daily Show headlined the Netflix is a joke fest on Friday, and he said the following. He said, quote, I know liberals don't say Joe Biden is old. Don't say what people say with their own eyes. I know you don't want to say it because Trump is so scary, but he's bleeping old. Meanwhile, on the other side, the host of The View, focusing on Trump, speculating on which prison the former president might be sent to.
I don't want this to sound like I'm doing wishful thinking.
Yes.
But which prison would be best?
I know which one.
I'm going to give you, Michael. Well, that's what I got. Number one. What about Guantanamo Bay? Okay?
Yeah. Well, that'd be close to Mar-a-Lago. Melania can come and visit.
That's right.
Look, first of all, let me go out on a limb and say that Joe Biden is old, and I think we should embrace his age. And in his second term, he will be carried up the stairs to the plane by somebody, okay? And I think it's fair game.
You're good with that?
Yeah. In his second term, where he doesn't have to pretend to be young and vibrant, no more running up the stairs. Somebody can carry him up the stairs. They could carry him around the White House like,
like
Lady Gaga when she was brought into the music awards, with 4 people holding her up. That's fine by me in the second term. Until then, we'll pretend he could walk around, do everything that a guy in his 20s can do. And it's okay for comedians to make fun of Joe Biden. It's okay for comedians to make fun of Donald Trump. It's okay for comedians to offend people sometimes, because that's the job of a comedian.
I wanted to say about Jon Stewart, because I covered a lot of the Burn Pits bill when he was up on Capitol Hill for years with him, and he would call out Democrats and Republicans if they weren't getting it done.
Always.
So I don't think there's any sort of, if one side feels a loyalty from Jon Stewart, he is going to call out what he sees and not take certain
It's also
sides.
the job of a comedian, right? The comedian's job is to be a truth teller.
The job
and
of
make people laugh.
What about that? What about that about which prison he's going to be in?
Whoopi Goldberg is also a comedian. She's a very good comedian, too.
Yeah, it's just not a serious. They're clearly not being serious. Right. None of this is serious. Although the idea that the president of the United States would have to be carried up the stairs, that horrible.
It's horrible if he's got to run for election, but he won't have to run again.
Did you see what happened today?
What did he do today? Was he running?
Roll the clip.
No.
My theology professor at the Catholic school I went to was a guy named Riley, last name, and he had been drafted by the Green Bay Packers.
he read the last name on the prompter instead of.
So I read what the
actual
prompter says all the time.
Hence what
Did you see when I guest hosted for Leland Vittert how bad I was at reading
that?
the
Reading prompter's not easy.
It's hard. You're great at it, which is why you can't host a debate. But, you know, it's hard. It's hard work.
There's got to be a way that they can make him look like he's not Ron Burgundy, but the President of the United States. And the fact that he reads pause or last name or other things during this.
Yeah, his team
we need to expect more of the of the leader of the freest nation of the world, and we just are okay with being comfortable.
We got the worm brain guy. We got the can't read the prompter right guy.
Yes.
And we have Trump, who, when he is riffing, just goes bonkers, right? He just says all the stuff. So you see why, and this is what it comes through in poll after poll after poll. Americans understandably despair of these choices.
And to me, what's fascinating, as you say, this will come down to like 6% of the voters. Right? It's just going to come down to that sliver of an amount. Yeah. All right, other side of the break. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, joins us. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. All right, before we say goodbye, something that unfortunately caught our eye: the statue of President George Washington at George Washington University, which was vandalized by anti-Israel protesters. You could see there in that image the statue now covered with what appears to be a tarp. Now, overnight here in Washington, D.C. police cleared out that encampment at the university, arrested over 30 people. Host of On Balance, Leland Vittert, joins us. Hello, Leland. When you look at that, it's like disturbing to see. I mean, that's George Washington.